I want to talk about the distinction of what I grew up to know as Tejano music. To me, definitions or words mean things, okay? So definitions are important. I attended the Nortex event here in Monterrey, and I've listened to lots of interviews from a Mexican perspective, and I'm talking Mexican national point of view. And it's always referred to as Tex-Mex instead of Tejano. And that's a play on words. Tex-Mex is not a genre. It might be to the people here in Monterrey or Mexico, but it's not, by my definition, it's not the correct name. Tejano music means originating out of Texas from primarily Mexican-American artists who in a lot of cases speak very little Spanish, but sing in Spanish. Sure, some of these songs are old songs written by Mexican songwriters, artists, and then have been morphed and re-expressed in a different rhythm. In this case, Tejano music. So to me, Tejano music means of American origin, with influences from jazz, from rock and roll, from pop music. It has many different origins or distinctions, I guess, going back to the early days, and I'm going back to the early 1900s. We had in Texas a lot of Czechoslovakians, Polish, Germans, which is my understanding, that's where the accordion influence came. I'm no expert in all of that. I just know that when I was a kid and we would go to weddings usually weddings, not quinceañeras so much, but as a kid, I remember just being fascinated by the three-man group. The guy playing the bateria, the drums, the guy playing the bass or the requinto, and then the accordion player. Very, very simplistic beat, but the intricacies that the accordion brought to the music captivated me in my head. I remember telling my dad when I got to about the sixth grade or so, I remember him asking me what instrument I would like to play. And without hesitation, I immediately went to the accordion. My father says, "You're crazy." He didn't want to have nothing to do with that, because my dad was a state champion on the trumpet at the age of 15, 16 years old in Texas. So his ear was, from the big band era of music in the United States. So he wasn't going to have his son playing the accordion, because that was considered música más bajito de nosotros, lesser than. I never looked at it that way because I didn't know the difference. I just loved the rhythm. And I ended up playing the saxophone, by the way. Again, that was at my dad's strong suggestion. I still have that saxophone today. I recently had it reworked. Cost me a little bit to get it done, but I can play it if I want to. I just need more practice. I don't have the place to do it. I'd probably run my neighbor out, or they'd call the police on me. But anyway, I went into the service. I came back from living in San Diego, California. Met up with my cousins, and they took me out to a concert, or a nightclub actually, to go see a guy named Ram Herrera. And immediately it caught my attention. I said, Ram what? What? Ram? What is that? Sam Herrera, Ram Herrera. So it clashed in my head. But anyway, we went to the show, and I got to see Ramiro Herrera, Ram Herrera. And his song, Amor Querido, had recently come out. And I remember listening to the music, going deep, because I enjoyed the rhythms, the drum rhythms, the double beats, the intricacies of the music. Not just the danceability of it, but the intricacies of the music. I was fascinated by it. I didn't even know what it was called, Tejano music. That didn't mean anything to me. I mean, I'd heard of Agustin Ramirez, I'd heard of Little Joe, but I never considered it or talked about it in the light of Tejano music. Now, if I was sitting here speaking with Little Joe, he would call it Chicano, which is a whole different term that I don't like either, but we can talk about that another day. And then eventually, by chance, I ended up helping a friend of mine do some DJ work for private parties and stuff like that. And I'd get on the microphone and get the crowd all jazzed up. And one thing led to another. We ended up going to a radio station just to sit in one night. And it was a black gospel radio program on KTSU in Houston, Texas. Black gospel program. We're not in the studio 10 minutes, not even that. And the host of the program hands me a message that he wanted me. He goes, "Hey, you're going to be reading this live here in about 2 minutes. Get ready." I'm like, "What?" So real quick, man, I got thrown onto the microphone and I read it off perfectly, and that kind of lit the fire in me. And one thing led to another. I went to a radio broadcast school, did some camera work. Eventually, I got involved with the radio business just because I was fascinated with the music. I loved it. KQQK 106.5 in Houston, Texas. There was a guy named Ken Smith. That was his real name. On the air, he was known as El Güero. And he's a white dude, red-haired dude, but he spoke the lingo. And he had a very high-energy presentation, and I really liked how he presented himself. I've lost touch with him. I don't know where he's at, if he's still living or whatever, but he opened the door for me to get into KQQK. I started off as the van driver, which meant I was a utility man for whatever came up. Eventually, they needed somebody on there to fill in, and I took a shift overnight just for giggles. And that led to about 10, 11 years of me working on the radio. And then I got introduced to the full complement of the golden era of Tejano music. Groups like Selena. She was still a young girl when I first met her. David Ligarza y Los Musicales, I didn't know who they were. Ram Herrera, I didn't know who he was. I had heard of Pio Trevino. I had heard of El Gato Negro, Ruben Ramos. Of course, I'd heard of Little Joe, Agustin Ramirez. But I never listened to that kind of music. I was a rock and roller. You know, I lived listening to Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Chicago, Steely Dan, or some of the pop groups, you know, Michael Jackson even, Madonna. I also like classical music. My dad kind of put that influence on me. So I met all of the up-and-coming artists at the time that the Tejano music scene was exploding in a way that it had never, ever done before. I was working at a 100,000 watt FM radio station in Houston, Texas. We had a really crappy signal, by the way. And if you don't know anything about the radio business, we have what are called potentiometers. And so if the sound level dropped below a certain level at our particular radio station, we had such bad equipment. If it dropped below a certain level, it created a pop on the air. Well, we didn't even know what we were doing at the time, but in order to keep that pop from occurring in the middle of speaking or at a low point in the music, we kept music underneath us, a music bed, to keep those potentiometers high enough so it didn't create that crackle. And so we learned how to talk over that and introduce our music. And little did we know it became kind of our signature. Most people don't know that. The ability to talk through an intro of a song right up to the lyrics. And I'm not talking about just running your mouth for the sake of running your mouth, but doing it with style and presentation, doing it with rhythm, to me, takes more talent than people give credit for. And I'm not trying to prop myself up. I'm just saying there's a way, there's a presentation that comes across very smoothly, and you don't even know that it's happening when it's done well. But when it's done poorly, you know. You know. I'm critical, but now I'm just kind of telling you this in review. But I just wanted to share that. I've gone on long enough.